Thanks a lot, Ms. Paolini. And last but not least, we will hear now from Ms. Maureen Santos. Ms. Santos is a policy officer at the Federation of Organizations for Social and Education Assistance in Rio de Janeiro. Please.
Obrigada. Boa tarde.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, both those that are present in person and those that are connected. And I'm sure there are a lot of people from Latin America that are remotely connected. This meeting that we have been invited to, this panel discussion, thank you very much, has asked what the role for trade is in sustainable development. And many of the points that I've prepared have already been presented by earlier speakers, so I'll cut down my presentation a little bit as a result. So on the question about what the role is that trade can play in sustainable development, I think maybe we could think about another question. How can we think about a green transition as suggested by the European Union, and which involves the social organizations in Latin America? Can we ensure that's a proper change, but can we do that without increasing poverty and people being excluded from society, and without mismanagement of raw materials? Now, perhaps if we can use trade agreements, if we actually reverse the way they've been used, so they have a positive effect on relations between countries who have such different positions in terms of the economic position that they occupy. Can we do that so that trade does become compatible with a new model for development, for the kind of future all of us would like to see? And along these lines, I think, although this is a panel on Latin America, we have to talk about Mercosur. When it comes to Mercosur and the social organizations, I represent a network which brings together 25 civil society organizations, family businesses, trade unions. For us, Mercosur is an agreement that was built on a lack of transparency, information, and social involvement. Many of us weren't heard during the negotiation process originally. So at the same time, we're discussing whether this agreement will bring more democracy to countries. If democracy wasn't a part of building up the agreement, it seems slightly unlikely. Professor Werner mentioned various points that I could raise. The question of inflation, or the increase in the price of commodities like rubber, and the impact this has on Latin American countries, particularly when it comes to increasing poverty and inequalities and food insecurity. There was a study last year in Brazil that said that 33 million Brazilians are suffering from hunger. More than half of the population of Brazil is actually experiencing food insecurity, at least at one point in time. And then COVID, the pandemic, exacerbated this situation. And so if we look at the model that is being suggested based on the import and export of goods and using commodities and minerals, of course this is going to have an impact on the development model of Mercosur countries have, and how their future will develop. Because when talking about agreements, you have to look not just at what is happening now, what will happen in the future, and what's happened in the past. We've had new governments elected in the region. In Brazil, we've had a new government for the last 4 months, the Lula government. There's a great deal of pressure to speed up progress on the Mercosur agreement and its signature without taking time for there to be a national debate on the agreement that was negotiated during a very anti-democratic period, as has already been mentioned by some MEPs. So to what extent is this a democratic agreement, as there are so many issues that seem to have been pushed under the carpet? And then the chapter on trade and social and sustainable development that has been mentioned frequently here, and I do agree with many points, does include a chapter that has been referred to by many as though it were protecting the possibility of climate policies and environment policies actually moving forward. We hope that is going to happen, but you have to bear in mind that the ecosystem is very fragile. And if you look at the rights of indigenous peoples and their right to informed consent and consultation, that has not been fully taken into account, unfortunately. And there are important points that need to be taken into account if you're talking about a green transition in the European Union and the use of natural resources that are from Latin America. And I would say a large percentage of commodities such as silver and copper, which are in the Mercosur agreement, are in mines that have been in areas where there have been disagreements with local people. And I only have to say Brumadinho and Ariana, where we had tragedies that took place. I don't really have time to go into more details, but I'd just like to conclude by saying that we really need to talk about ensuring social sustainable development is going to benefit both sides, not just the European Union. For you, the environmental debate is important, but that has to be a part of cooperation processes which have to take precedence over trade relations. If you really want closer relations with Latin America, we have to be fighting poverty and exclusion, and we have to look at other forms of development. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Christoph Hansen for 2